Hey, I'm Hunter from SkillThrive, and in this video, I'm going to walk you through how I send transactional emails in my Next.js applications using Sendgrid and dynamic templates. So here is a project that I'm working on that once a user verifies that they're human using reCAPTCHA, they can then submit their email in order to get a code in order to log in. This code is then sent to their email via Sendgrid. And this is a template that I uploaded in Sendgrid that in my backend is just sending this code and then using the Sendgrid API to say, hey, plug this code into this spot in the template and then send the template to the user, or not the template, but the email to the user. Then as a user, I just copy this value, come back, paste it into this verify form, submit it, and then I'm authenticated. So this is very similar to the process that I use on my actual website on skillthrive.com. And I'm also using it here for this new project I'm working on. So what you need is you first need an email to work with. Now you could grab an email from Envato, which is a huge marketplace for code and all types of things for video, photography, illustrations, which is what I did. And I'll link the form that I use. And I also use an application called StampReady. Now StampReady is has a monthly cost, and all I do here is just use it for building these templates and then exporting it as HTML right here. Now this is a little bit beyond the scope of this tutorial, and a little probably way too complicated for the point of this is to show you how to send transactional emails. So what I wanted to do in this tutorial is just use some free ones here from WildBit. And if you come down here, you can actually preview all of these different free templates right here where they have them titled under where they're titled. And then there's a basic, which is like a min width, a max width one, a basic full, which is a full width email, and then a plain text email. Now we're going to be using the basic style for this reset password. So if we just go ahead and open this, you can see that this is what this email is going to look like. And then we're just going to adjust it a little bit. So let's go ahead and just close this out. I'm going to come into where this template is, and you want to go into the templates folder and not the templates inline, because this is already has the CSS inlined, and these are easier to edit. And then we'll inline the CSS for compatibility reasons once we get ready to actually use it in Sendgrid. So let's go into basic, then password reset, and then open this content HTML. And then I'm just going to click here on raw, and it's just going to open all of the HTML for us. And then I just Command A and select it, copy it, and then I'm going to head into my terminal. I'm going to head into somewhere where I want to create this. Let's go into the documents. Then I'm going to create a new file here by writing touch, and we'll do email test.html. And now if we go into my documents, you should, if we look at this, we should see this new file, email test.html. And let's go ahead and just open this with whatever code editor you want. I'm using Visual Studio Code. And then I'm just going to paste that here. So you can see here, if we scroll up, we have all of these CSS styles. We have a title here, so we could say something like pass login to whatever the name of your website is. So like that. And down here after the styles, we have our HTML, which we can go through and edit whichever way we want. Now, just to save some time, I already went through and edited all of the emails here in this email.html file. And I just changed it a little bit to fit my branding. So let's just go ahead and just see what that looks like. So I'm just going to open this right into the Brave browser. Oops, that's the email test. That's the wrong one. Let's do this one. Okay, so you can see here that I have the name of my website. You recently requested to log into Keyboard FM. Use the code below to complete authentication. This code is only valid for the next 10 minutes. So this is specific for my app, but just to give you an idea of what it might look like for you. Then I took the H1 styling, and this is the one I'm actually going to be using when I'm sending the template. So this value here is going to be recognized by Sendgrid as this needs to be a template with a value that I send over in the API, and then go ahead and plug that value here in this template spot. And then the rest of it is just saying, hey, if you did not expect this email, just ignore it. And then I have your standard stuff here at the bottom for the footer and stuff like that. Okay, so once we have that, what we want to do now is we want to go ahead and inline the HTML, or excuse me, the CSS, just in case if this is being used by someone who is on something that removes the style tags altogether, it's going to be inlined and they're still going to have a good experience because it'll be styled correctly. So to do that, there's several tools you can use, but the one that I like to use is this one by Automatic, the same people behind WordPress.com. And this is a open source a package that you could use in your node projects, and it's also here hosted by them. And the reason I like this is because it comes with all these abilities here to all these options that you can check on and off. Now, a lot of them will remove style tags. So what I did is I unchecked that because I still want these styles to be in the style tags, and then I also want it to be inlined. So what I did here is I just went into my HTML like this. I copied it, selected it all, pasted it in, and then it exports it or outputs the inline style. So you can see here that all of these CSS classes are still here. And if we scroll down all the way towards the bottom, you'll see now that they're also inlined. So that takes care of that. So let's go ahead and just copy this. And now what we need to do is to create the template in Sendgrid. So of course, you'll need a Sendgrid account. And once you're signed into Sendgrid, you'll want to come over under Email API and click on Dynamic Templates. Then you go ahead and create a new template, and I'm just creating one under Test, and then clicking here to create a new version. I'm going to click Blank Template, select the code editor. Then I'm just going to get rid of all this, and then I'm going to paste in that inlined HTML and CSS that I just copied from that tool. And you can see that everything's looking as expected. Now, we're not seeing this that URL right here because it is it's recognized as just being a part of the template. So you're not going to see anything that's templatized here because it's in those handlebars. But everything looks good. We do need to come into the settings though, and we need to name this something. So we'll just do auth login. And you need to create a subject for the email when it's being sent. So we'll just say your login code valid for 10 minutes. Okay, so that looks good. You also have a spot here to send some test data, but we're not going to worry about that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and click Save. Okay, so that takes care of everything in Sendgrid. Now what we want to do is we want to use the Sendgrid in our Node application or in our Next.js application, and then send that email over to the user. So let's jump into the code and take a look at what that looks like. So the way that I like to handle this is I first create a new class called email in my project. So if you've never created a class, it's really simple, and what's nice about this is that you can create a nice reusable way to handle things in your application. So here, I'm creating a new class here in this email.js file. I'm importing Sendgrid from the node package that you need to install. And I'm also passing in my API key, which I get from the Sendgrid dashboard. Then I'm creating a new class that I'm exporting. And if you've never created a class, it's pretty simple. The nomenclature is a little weird, but essentially the constructor is what you're going to be passing into this email. We're going to be passing in a user and URL, and we're also going to be defining a value called from email and then from name, which we're just hard coding those values here. Now this user is going to be an object, and we're getting the email that we're sending this person to on that object by accessing the user object and then the email property on it. And this value is coming from our database. And you'll see what that code looks like here in just a few moments. The URL, which in this case is the code that we're going to be sending over for the user to copy and paste to log in, is going to be defined here by the variable called URL. Now, what's cool about classes is that you can define methods on them that you can just chain on in order to do a whole bunch of different things. Now, right now, my application is really simple, and I'm just using email to send this, what I'm calling a magic link. And the Sendgrid API requires you to pass in this object, which I'm calling mail options. It requires that there is a to field, which we're just setting to this value up here that we're defined in the constructor, a from object, which is the email and name, which we also define in the constructor, and then this template ID. Now this template ID comes from if we go ahead and go back into, oops, let's go to make sure we save this. This template ID comes right here from inside Sendgrid. So we expanded this under test. The template ID is right here. So if we copy this, and I'm just go ahead and close this because we don't need this anymore, and then paste it here, Sendgrid will now know to use that template when it's using when it's sending this email. And the URL is, again, just the one that we defined up here, which we're going to pass into our email class once we use it in our API. Okay, so once we have that, then we call Sendgrid send, passing in those mail options. And then if everything's good, we're not going to do anything. And if we get an error, we're just going to console.log that error. All right, so that looks like everything for that. So now let's go ahead and jump into this login path, which we have in our Next.js API. So it's under API, user, and then login. And it's going to scroll up here. Now, I'm using Next Connect, which is a way to use middleware in Next.js. DB Connect is going to connect to Mongo DB database, so I can then do things like call this function like user find one, which is going to find a user in the database. And this user is coming in from this model that I defined up here in my models, which is our Mongo DB models. And then this email is that class that we just talked about. So I have this, so I use Next Connect, which allows you to just have this post. So just kind of like you would in Express, I'm saying on a post request, this is an asynchronous request. And then what I'm doing is I'm defining user by looking at the email that was passed in and then seeing if that user is in the database by using this function called find one, which is a method on Mongoose, which allows you to work with MongoDB really easily. And then if there's no user, it's just going to create one in the database. Then if there is a user, it's going to create an auth token, which is a method that I defined on the user model. And then it's just going to save that user in the database. And then it's going to try to send a email to the user. So in order to use this class, we say new email, passing in that user we got back from our database, which is going to have that email stored on it. And then also the URL, which in this case is the auth token. Then again, what's really cool about classes is we can just go ahead and chain on the method. So we'll say send magic link, and then it's going to use all that information to send that email over to the user. If everything goes well, we're going to send back a response of check your email to complete login, which will show in our UI. And if there's any issues, we're going to make sure that the user is, their token is removed and that we're going to send them an error to try again and that there was an issue. Okay, so now that we have that, I already went ahead and set up my app is running here. So if I come into this where I have it running, I can't remember where that is. Let's go ahead and just access that on localhost. I need to log out first. So before you remember that one email that was sent over, it was this one. So now I should be able to, I should get a different email because I'm using a different template ID. But essentially it should work the same. So let's go ahead and just try this out. So we'll go log in. Let's go ahead and send a test email. All right, so check our emails. So let's make sure that this worked properly. All right, so you recently requested to log into Keyboard FM, use the code to complete login. Okay, so this looks good. Let's copy this. Let's go back into our application here, paste it in, then click submit. All right, so you see how easy it is to send transactional emails using Sendgrid and dynamic templates. Be sure to check out the links below for some helpful resources as well as a code example, which you can dive into a little bit more to get a better idea of what's going on. Also, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and be sure to check out our guides on skillthrive.com as well as the rest of our videos on YouTube. Again, I'm Hunter from Skillthrive, and I'll see you in the next one.